Hello again, and welcome back to Mr. Mayor's Book Chats. Today I'm going to talk to you about 5 new books that we have down here at the library. First one is called Clean Getaway by Nick Stone. This is the same author of Dear Martin and Dear Justice, but this is her first middle grade book. And it tells the story of Scoob, who is 12 years old. And when his grandma pulls up to his house in a brand new Winnebago and invites him on an adventure, Scoob leaves a note for his dad and jumps in. And despite not really knowing where they're going or why grandma has traded in her car and house for this new RV, Scoob is kind of a willing wingman because he wants to save his spring break and escape his strict dad for a few days. So Scoob and his grandma embark on this adventure down to Mexico, driving this huge Winnebago. And the farther they get down the south, Scoob learns more and more about his grandma. See, his grandma is white and his grandpa was African American. And as they travel through the South, his grandma tells these stories about what life was like in the 1960s, a time of segregation and racial tension, where it was very difficult to be, having a mixed race relationship. Some hotels wouldn't allow them to stay. Some cities and towns wouldn't allow them to eat at restaurants there. So Scoob is learning this history of his family and of kind of being African American during the 1960s. But there's also something going on with grandma as well. There's a reason why grandma isn't answering telephone calls from Scoob's dad, and why grandma is acting a little bit more strange kind of as this trip goes on. So it's a great look at history, but also there's a lot of mystery and adventure as well. This is an excellent one. Highly recommend that one. Next book is, I recommend this one to boys and girls. This is one of my must reads. Maybe He Just Likes You. It's about a girl named Mila who's in 7th grade. And one day out at recess, a boy comes up and gives Mila a hug, just kind of out of the blue for no reason. And then the next day, another boy kind of does the same thing. And then some boys are kind of smirking at her and smiling at her and saying things to her that makes Mila feel just kind of weird. And, according to her friend Zara, Mila's being immature and overreacting. And, she says, don't you know what flirting is? Maybe the boys just like you, and you should be thankful for their attention. But Mila's not thankful. It makes her feel uncomfortable, this attention, because she doesn't want it. And it keeps happening despite Mila's protests. It's happening on the bus and in the halls and even during band practice, a place where she feels very comfortable and excels. It seems like the boys are everywhere, and their behavior doesn't feel like flirting to her. So she doesn't know what it is. So she is kind of just lets it go at the beginning, but as the story goes on, she starts to find her voice and realizes that she's going to have to speak up and find her voice to make this stop. Again, this is a great book for both boys and girls. Next 2 books are novels in verse. So even though they appear long, there's lots of white space, so they don't take quite as long as some other books. This is Redwood and Ponytail. This is the same author of House Arrest. All of her books are told in verse. This is about 2 middle school girls, Tam and Kate, who are kind of grappling with their blossoming feelings for each other. So Tam is a volleyball player she is kind of the picture of a tomboy. And Kate is a popular cheerleader. She's got the perfect ponytail and what seems to be like the perfect life. Well, when they notice each other at 7th grade registration, Tam and Kate they link eyes and they kind of both think, I haven't seen them before. I'd really like to talk to them. They look interesting. Well, when they meet face to face, they strike an immediate friendship. And then they start eating lunch, and they start eating lunch every single day together. And then they start walking through the hallways with their pinkies entwined, kind of like the cover of this book. And as they grow closer together, each finds herself questioning who she thought she was. Tam doesn't know how she fits into Kate's, what looks like her perfect world. And Kate doesn't know, her mom is always pushing her to be the best and kind of have this perfect life. And Kate doesn't know if she can even tell her mom about these feelings that she's having. So this is just an excellent look into these two girls who are trying to figure out who they are and who they want to be. The next book is historical fiction, but it's also, again, told in verse. This is about Sophie Scholl. And Sophie Scholl and her brother were members of the Hitler Youth living in Germany during World War II. But as the Nazis' chokehold increased and the kind of arrests kept coming and the mistreatment of the Jewish people escalated, Sophie and her brother and a few other friends realized that this isn't right. This isn't good. So they begin to resist. They form this White Rose resistance group, and they start kind of in secret speaking up against the Nazis and speaking up against Hitler. This was an extremely, extremely dangerous thing to do, because if they were caught, they could be arrested and they could be killed. Well, they begin writing these pamphlets and distributing these pamphlets, and eventually they get caught and they get arrested. And Sophie and her brother eventually pay the ultimate price for resisting the Nazis and for speaking up for what is right. Sophie Scholl is kind of one of those figures in history that everybody should know, because she was this teenager that gave her life for what she believed in. So this goes into Sophie's story as well as her brothers and her families, and has different perspectives about this time in history. Another excellent one, especially if you like history and World War II books. Check that one out. And the last one I'm going to talk to you about is called The One and Only Bob. This is the sequel to The One and Only Ivan. And if you have not read The One and Only Ivan, I don't know what you're waiting for. But Bob is this little chihuahua, this tiny, sassy, wisecracking Bob, who now lives with his girl, Julia, and her parents. And seemingly in a perfect life, he's able to go visit Ivan and Stella at the zoo. Not Stella, I'm sorry, Ivan and Ruby at the zoo, and kind of catch up with them regularly. But then a storm occurs, and Bob is not living his perfect life anymore, and he has to come back. He has to find his way back to his family. And Bob, again, just fantastic book, fantastic character. Check this one out. You will not be disappointed. All of these are available at the library. Come check them out.